We tell ourselves hell is chaos, a pit of flame and endless wailing. But centuries-old grimoires whisper another image. Beneath the earth lies a court more ordered than any king's, a terrible reflection of heaven itself. Thrones are carved in shadow, banners fly for no saint. In those pages, demons do not drift. They hold rank, they bear titles, they command legions with the precision of generals. Priests, philosophers, and secret magicians spent minds and lifetimes mapping that infernal administration, naming princes, listing dukes, tallying armies. Each name promised a key, each sigil promised a door. Who penned that ledger of the damned, and what rules from the throne at the very top? Tonight, we turn those black pages and descend, step by step, into the hierarchy of hell. Come close and listen for the names.
As we pry open those black pages, the question becomes not just who walks in hell, but why anyone bothered to number them at all. Medieval minds were obsessed with order. If heaven could be arranged in choirs and stations, if angels marched in hierarchies named by theologians and saints, then why should the world beneath not imitate that same structure? The answer is both practical and profoundly human. Naming a thing is the first step to mastering it. To call a demon by its title, to know its duties and its rank, was to shrink terror into a taxonomy that could be consulted, argued with, and, the magicians hoped, controlled. This impulse had a theological scaffold. Christendom inherited ideas of angelic orders from ancient and patristic writers who described ranks of heavenly beings, seraphim, cherubim, thrones, dominions, each with a place in a cosmic bureaucracy. Demonologists inverted that divine map. If angels could be catalogued, so too could their opposites. The devil's court became an antitype, a mirror image in shadow, where each heavenly office had a counterfeit in the pit. By the late Middle Ages, this mirror had concrete names attached to it, and those names drifted into grimoires and trial records alike. But the hierarchy served more than theological symmetry. It answered a legal and moral anxiety. When misfortune struck, a failed harvest, an unexpected death, a sudden madness, ordinary people demanded a responsible party. A labeled hierarchy of evil provided a scapegoat that could be named, arraigned, and punished. It translated a scattering of miseries into a chain of command. Someone must be accountable. Someone must have ordered this calamity. The language of rank made accusation feel reasonable. It gave inquisitors a ledger to consult and a script to read from. Accusation thus became an administrative act as much as a spiritual one. There was also a pragmatic dimension for those who trafficked in ritual knowledge. For ceremonial magicians, the hierarchy was a manual: who to call, how to call them, and what precautions to observe. Grimoires do not merely list names, they append offices, jurisdictions, emblems, and modes of service. A prince of the infernal court demanded a different tone, a different seal, a more elaborate circle than a lesser spirit. The ranks were operational. They told you which names opened which doors, how many legions a spirit might command, and which offerings would placate or bind it. To summon without this script was to invite catastrophe. The magician who mistook a duke for a prince could hope for coin and receive carnage. These lists also mirrored earthly structures of power. Medieval Europe was feudal. Kingdoms were arranged in tiers: monarchs, dukes, earls, captains, footmen. It was natural, perhaps inevitable, that demonographers would borrow the language they knew best. Hell was described in terms they understood: a monarch at its apex, aristocracy beneath, captains who marshaled ranks, banners under which hosts assembled. This analogy made the infernal comprehensible. If kings on earth could command, why not kings in the underworld? The models overlap because human imagination borrows its forms from the nearest, most intelligible example. There is a darker psychological truth folded into this ordering. To frame evil as bureaucracy is to domesticate it, to make it bureaucratically inefficient, negotiable, and therefore manipulable. It reassures the fearful. The devil has officers you can bribe, doors you can lock from a list, names you can strike from a list. It turns existential terror into a puzzle. The ledger of the damned offers the illusion of technique. A conjurer can learn the right combination of words and seals and win a bargain or a protection. Whether or not such bargains existed in any objective sense, the belief alone reshaped behavior. Priests prepared exorcisms tailored to named princes. Magistrates invoked the authority of grimoires to validate torments. Households clung to talismans against specific legions supposedly responsible for disease or blight. The grimoires themselves reflect this multiplicity of motives. Books like the medieval compilations and later Renaissance manuals do not agree on a single chart. Some list princes who preside over cardinal sins. Others give dukes dominion over particular crafts or regions. Some texts speak in military terms: banners, legions, thousands of infernal soldiers at a prince's command. Others frame the court in bureaucratic offices: a treasurer of hell, an architect of infernal engines, a scribe who records every oath and transgression. The variety is telling. The hierarchy is less a single revelation than a palimpsest of human attempts to make sense of fear. There is one final reason scholars and sorcerers loved rank: narrative power. Stories need structure. A tale of unnamed horrors collapses into murk. A tale where the devil appears as a single, knowable monarch, and where his lieutenants perform specific deeds, can be told, transmitted, and legislated against. Names multiply into narratives: the witch who served under Asmodeus, the plague sent by the Duke of Pestilence. These phrases create causal lines that anchor rumor to reality and rumor to law. Thus, the hierarchy did more than catalog evil. It braided it into society's stories, institutions, and instruments of control. So when you read a grimoire and see the list of princes, dukes, and captains, remember, you are looking at a map not only of the infernal, but of the anxieties that produced it. The hierarchy is at once a theology, a tool, a political mirror, and a story-making engine. It gave people a way to name their enemies, and in naming, to act upon them.
We descend now from the architecture of hell into its throne room, where names glow like embers, and each title carries centuries of dread. These are the so-called princes of darkness, but in the old books, no single crown sits comfortably on one head. In the Latin Vulgate, the name Lucifer simply meant morning star, but by the Middle Ages, it had become shorthand for the archangel who fell through pride. In Grimoires, Lucifer is not a horned beast, but a radiant, fallen sovereign, emperor of the East, lord of pride, the one who once bore light and now rules in shadow. Some texts call him the great Duke of Hell, others the true king of the infernal empire, and yet others place him below Satan as a minister. His domain is pride, ambition, forbidden knowledge.
Magicians who invoked him sought illumination, wealth, or command. Exorcists described him as dazzling and terrible, a mirror of the angel he once was. The Hebrew word Satan means adversary, and in early scripture he is a challenger rather than an enemy. Medieval demonology, however, recast Satan as the personification of opposition to God, the general of rebellion. Some lists put him at the summit, enthroned as monarch of hell. Others split him from Lucifer, making him the prosecutor or the prince of wrath. In trial records, his name appears most often in oaths and denunciations. Witches were said to renounce Christ and swear to Satan. In the Grimoires, he is colder than Lucifer, less a tempter of knowledge, more the embodiment of force, destruction, and legal damnation. If Lucifer is the false light, Satan is the iron hand. Originally a Philistine deity named Beelzebub, lord of the high place, transformed by Hebrew scribes into Beelzebub, lord of the flies, Beelzebub became in medieval imagination the prince of false gods, and in some texts the devil's chief of staff. In the Lantern of Light, he presides over gluttony. In other grimoires, he is the patron of witchcraft's mystic rites and the sovereign of swarms, decay, and contagion. The Pseudomonarchia Daemonum lists him as supreme chief of hell, second only to Lucifer, commanding legions of demons who stir up war and plague. Artists painted him as a monstrous fly or a crowned demon surrounded by insects, a sign of both corruption and fertility. 3 thrones already, 3 different crowns, and still the court of darkness is not complete. The old books name more: a serpent of the sea, a demon of lust, and a fallen angel without a master. Thrones beyond counting, but no single crown. Beyond the radiant rebel, the accuser, and the lord of flies, the grimoires speak of other sovereigns, rulers not of thrones, but of hungers, tides, and temptations. Their names slip like oil between cultures, sometimes gods, sometimes devils, always feared. In scripture, Leviathan is a sea monster God alone can tame, but demonologists made it more than a beast, a prince. In the medieval lists, Leviathan becomes Grand Admiral of Hell, the personification of envy, the gatekeeper of the seas that separate this world from the next. He is sometimes described as a serpent so vast it encircles the oceans, sometimes as a crowned dragon whose coils form the walls of hell itself. Magicians who invoked him sought hidden currents, knowledge of mysteries, passage across dangerous waters, power over storms. Exorcists warned that Leviathan's whisper was jealousy and his breath despair, wrapping souls in chains as tight as his coils. Asmodeus appears in the Book of Tobit as a jealous spirit slaying the husbands of a young woman. Later texts elevate him to Prince of Lust and Wrath. In the Testament of Solomon, he reveals himself as destroyer of marriages and giver of forbidden arts. By the Renaissance, he is the king of the 9 hells of sensuality, master of games of chance, patron of architects and masons, the whisperer of reckless impulses. Artists show him with 3 heads, man, ram, and bull, riding a dragon, clutching a serpent. Magicians approached him from mastery of love and crafts. Inquisitors accused witches of calling him to stir up passion, discord, and ruin. Unlike the others, Belial's name is not originally a title, but a term of contempt, worthless, lawless. Yet in demonology, he becomes a prince of independence and corruption, the first created after Lucifer in some texts, the prince of lies in others. He governs arrogance, lawlessness, and seduction of authority. Grimoires assign him legions of angels who fell with him and call him the most difficult to command. He grants high offices and favors, but only to those who offer great sacrifices. Some manuals warn that Belial appears beautiful, but speaks softly, twisting truth into chains. In occult lore, he is the archetype of rebellion without loyalty, a sovereign without a throne, who nevertheless corrupts thrones on earth. Lucifer, Satan, Beelzebub, Leviathan, Asmodeus, Belial, each text arranges them differently, yet together they form the imagined nobility of the pit, princes of darkness presiding over a court as intricate as any on earth. Many names, many thrones, yet no single crown, and beneath them waits an army, a bureaucracy of shadows whose banners still flutter in old grimoires. Dare we read their ranks?
Beyond the princes' thrones, the black pages don't end. They unfurl. What had been a court of 6 or 7 names explodes into columns of ink like soldiers on parade. This is where the grimoires stop whispering of monarchies and start reading like muster rolls. In Johann Weyer's Pseudomonarchia Daemonum and the Lesser Key of Solomon, the underworld becomes a register. 72 spirits are listed by title, each described with heraldic precision. Some are called kings, but most are dukes, marquises, earls, presidents, officers of an unseen empire. Each entry begins with a name, a sigil, a short description of powers, and the size of the legions at its command. The language is dry and almost clerical, yet what it records is anything but. A few names stand out like banners in the smoke. Ammon, a marquis appearing as a wolf with a serpent's tail, who reconciles enemies and reveals past and future. Barbatos, a duke who arrives with 4 kings and teaches the language of birds and beasts, uncovering treasures hidden by enchantment. Bune, a duke who makes men eloquent, stirs the dead from their graves, and moves the bones of kings to secret places. Dantalion, a duke who knows the thoughts of all men and can change them at will. Paimon, the famous king riding a dromedary surrounded by musicians, said to teach all arts and sciences and reveal the mysteries of the earth. Each name comes with a sigil, a peculiar knot of lines and curves said to be the demon's seal. Magicians copied these seals onto parchment, metal discs or wax tablets, and set them inside their protective circles. The sigil was not decoration, but control, the sign that bound the spirit, a kind of infernal heraldry, a coat of arms of the pit. These entries also list the legions each spirit commands. Ammon with 40 legions, Barbatos with 30, Paimon with 200. The numbers echo Roman discipline, a legion of soldiers multiplied into the thousands, but here transmuted into spirits of wind and smoke. Renaissance readers did not see chaos, they saw an army camped beneath the world, waiting under banners stitched with forbidden signs. This is where hell stops being a myth and becomes a structure, a court with its aristocracy and a field with its captains. By reading these lists, Europe's demonologists gave the unseen a shape that could be feared, named, or summoned. An empire of shadows, every officer named, every banner marked. But what do these ranks mean, and why did summoners believe a sigil could hold an army? The answer lies in the mindset of the magicians themselves. To the medieval scholar, the spirit world was not chaos. It was an extension of the great chain of being. If angels had choirs and orders, then so must demons. And if one could draw a king's seal to command his soldiers, one might also draw a demon seal to command his legions. Paper was a battlefield, ink a weapon. In the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, Johann Weyer listed 69 of these infernal officers,
each with a heraldic sigil, a rank, and a specialization. It reads like a dark army manual. Dukes who can find lost treasures, earls who can sow discord between friends, marquises who can cause storms or still them. For every aspect of life, a demonic counterpart. For every fear, a name. The language is still bureaucratic. This duke commands 26 legions, that earl governs 30, but the content is anything but mundane. The number of legions attached to each name implied a scale beyond human armies. 1 legion meant 6,000 soldiers, 30 legions meant nearly 200,000 spirits under one banner. The text never says how such a host would appear if summoned. It lets the imagination tremble at the thought. These grimoires also tell how to call them. A circle on the floor, a seal drawn on virgin parchment, words whispered at certain hours. If performed precisely, the duke would appear in fair form and obey the magician, or so the books claimed. The sigil was not just a signature, it was a key, a leash, a mark of jurisdiction in hell's invisible empire. Break the circle, mispronounce the name, and the leash snapped. Some names became almost legendary among occultists. Agares for languages and earthquakes, Bur for philosophy and healing, Dantelion for reading minds and turning hearts, Marchiosis, a wolf with the griffin's wings, vowing to return to heaven after 1,200 years. Each entry is a tiny mythology, a flash of some stranger order beneath the earth. And yet for all this order, no grimoire agrees completely. Numbers differ, powers shift, titles blur. The hierarchy is less a fixed chart than a collective dream of control. It shows not what hell truly is, but what people feared and desired it to be, a shadow bureaucracy where every vice and wonder could be invoked if only the right name was known. If princes sit on thrones and dukes command legions, what lies still deeper? The foot soldiers of the pit, or powers older than any rank? The grimoires hint at armies without number, but their banners have never been seen by mortal eyes.
The grimoires hint at something even stranger than dukes and princes, a machinery of hell so vast it needed clerks, generals, and treasurers as much as executioners. In these pages, the pit becomes less a cavern of fire than a city-state run on parchment and war drums, a kingdom of paperwork and blood. Every entry tallies not just names, but legions. A legion in Roman terms meant roughly 6,000 soldiers. When a duke is said to command 30 legions, the reader is staring at an invisible army of nearly 200,000 spirits. Weyer's Pseudomonarchia and the Ars Goetia read like a war office's register. Columns of ranks, banners, and the special skills of each unit. One may bring storms, another sway judges, a third rot crops. This is not random evil, but logistics, a dark economy of power. Some grimoires even assign offices. Mammon as treasurer of hell, hoarding infernal wealth. Moloch as master of sacrifice and war engines. Belphegor as a kind of infernal inventor, whispering corrupt designs to ambitious men. Even among the lower orders you find secretaries, architects, judges, each with a seal as if they carried a bureaucrat's stamp. The text makes hell look less like a riot and more like a ministry. And always the numbers: 20 legions, 40 legions, 60 legions. Scholars of the time believed names and numbers could bind spirits. To know a demon's rank was to know its jurisdiction. To write its sigil was to draw its leash. For the exorcist or the magician, hierarchy was a weapon. If hell had a pecking order, it could be exploited. This is the eerie paradox at the heart of demonology. The more chaotic and terrifying the invisible world seemed, the more feverishly humans tried to catalog it. In doing so, they built a mirror of their own society. Kings, dukes, soldiers, accountants, but rendered in shadow and flame. It's a hell that marches, files reports, and pays tribute upward, even as it plots rebellion. If every name hides a legion and every office masks a power, then what sits above it all? A throne of darkness, or simply our own need to impose order on terror?
When you begin comparing the texts, that question deepens, because no two maps of hell are the same. Every author drew a different chart of the abyss, yet somehow the outlines echo each other, like shadows thrown by the same fire. The Catholic demonologists of the Middle Ages, men like Michael Psellus, Peter Binsfeld, and the anonymous compilers of the Malleus, cast the hierarchy as a rebellion against heaven. Princes of pride, lust, greed, gluttony lined up with the 7 deadly sins. Their lists were moral taxonomies. Every demon a vice, every vice a soldier in Satan's army. These charts read like sermons disguised as military registers. The Protestant writers of the Reformation era twisted the picture further. To them, Rome itself was Babylon. The devil's bureaucracy was not only a cosmic enemy, but a mirror of Catholic pomp. Their pamphlets simplified and sensationalized, turning demons into lurid caricatures and popish superstitions into evidence of infernal plots. Same names, sharper edges. And then there were the Arabic and Jewish influences filtering through Spain and Sicily. Texts like the Gaias al-Hakim, Latinized as the Picatrix. This sprawling occult encyclopedia spoke of planetary intelligences, talismanic magic, and spirits older than Christianity. Renaissance occultists such as Cornelius Agrippa and Marsilio Ficino absorbed these currents, blending angelology, Neoplatonism, and astrology into a vision of the cosmos where demons were not only tempters but cosmic forces tied to stars and metals, colors and numbers. In their hands, the hierarchy of hell became less a moral ladder and more a web of correspondences, a kind of dark astrology where every spirit had its hour, its planet, its scent. By the time you reach the 16th and 17th centuries, each grimoire is its own atlas of the unseen. Weyer's Pseudomonarchia lists 69 demons. The Ars Goetia lists 72. The Grand Grimoire names entirely different commanders of the Infernal Army. Some spirits swap ranks from one book to the next. A duke becomes a king becomes a marquis. Yet beneath the contradictions, the same skeleton shows through, a kingdom of the damned that resembles the kingdoms of men. It is this repetition that makes the hair rise. Separate cultures, rival sects, different centuries, yet each conjures an underworld with ranks, seals, and armies. Did the authors copy one another, or were they, as they believed, glimpsing fragments of a real order? The books do not answer. They only deepen the question. Many maps, one shadow. Across centuries and continents, the same titles echo. Are these coincidences or footprints of something that truly marches beneath us?
Whatever the truth, The magicians of Europe treated these hierarchies as more than lists. They were blueprints for action, manuals for contact. To them, rank was not trivia, it was survival. The Grimoires lay it out like a rule book. A king of hell demands a full ceremonial circle drawn on consecrated ground, incense of a specific blend, planetary hours aligned, and offerings that mirror his nature. Iron for Mars, gold for the sun, myrrh for the spirits of Saturn. A duke might accept a simpler circle and a spoken conjuration. An earl might be summoned with a candle and a sigil alone. Every rank meant a different level of danger, a different layer of protection. To ignore that was to step off the map and into the abyss. These circles and seals were more than props. In the worldview of ceremonial magic, names and symbols created jurisdiction. To draw the sigil of a demon and pronounce its true name within a properly prepared space was to bind it, not by brute force, but by cosmic law. The higher the rank, the stronger the contract needed. It's why grimoires devote pages to pentacles, angels' names, psalms, and invocations. The magician wrapped himself in legal clauses before opening the door. And the texts are full of warnings. Call the prince without proper authority, and he may arrive not in fair form, but in terror and fury. Offer an incorrect gift, and he may accept it as a breach of pact. Speak a name you do not understand, and something else may answer. To call the wrong name was to invite the wrong shadow. One anonymous handbook warns. The neat hierarchies that read like clerical registers in daylight become barbed wire at midnight. This obsession with order, who commands whom, who answers to what, tells you as much about the summoner as about the spirits. It is the mentality of a lawyer or an officer, a belief that even darkness must obey rank, and that paperwork can tame the abyss. Whether that was ever true is another question, but for those who traced the circles, every seal was a contract, every word a blade, every name a door that could open both ways. What if the maps were not only for summoning, but for keeping something sealed? And if the lines of the circle fade, what walks back out? That question leads us to the hidden meaning of these hierarchies.
For all their crocodile-riding dukes and dragon-headed marquises, the grimoires are also mirrors. They were written in feudal Europe by men who lived under kings, dukes, earls, and officers. They projected their own power structures onto the unseen, turning chaos into a court and darkness into a ledger. By naming, ranking, and listing, they made evil comprehensible. A demon who is a duke feels containable. A prince with a sigil feels negotiable. The hierarchy of hell is less a window into the pit than a portrait of the minds staring at it. A shadow bureaucracy drawn by those who feared and desired power in equal measure. Yet in drawing it, they created something enduring. The same ranks echo through Catholic manuals, Protestant pamphlets, Arabic treatises, and Renaissance magic. Even now, in novels and films, our demons still wear crowns and carry banners. We cannot stop arranging the dark into armies. Perhaps that is our deepest superstition, that by putting names on terror, we make it obey. Or perhaps, as the old books hint, the ranks are real, and the naming only stirs them.
We have walked through a kingdom built of names, princes on thrones of shadow, dukes leading legions, banners stitched with sigils. Page by page, the old books turned chaos into a court, an infernal mirror of our own craving for order. Perhaps these hierarchies reveal more about us than about demons, our need to classify what we fear, our hope that even the abyss can be charted like a map. But the ink does not answer, it only whispers. The thrones remain empty, or occupied, depending on who dares to look. The question is no longer what sits atop the hierarchy of hell, but why we keep drawing it. Which rank of this dark kingdom pulls at your imagination? Would you dare speak its name aloud, even as a whisper? Tell us in the comments. Your thoughts may guide a future descent. And subscribe if you're ready to keep walking with us into history's darkest myths, where still more banners and names wait in the shadows.